Welcome to Black Thread Mysteries, where every unsolved mystery, vanishing act, and forbidden tale is just the beginning. Dive into the shadows with us as we pull the thread on the stories the world forgot or tried to hide. Subscribe and step into the unknown. There's something eerie about an old login screen frozen in time, one that once welcomed millions, now flickering dimly in the archives of forgotten code. No server connection, no users online, just digital dust. You click, and nothing happens. But for a moment, you imagine the rush of chats, forums, avatars moving in pixelated harmony. This was once a thriving place. Now, it's a haunted hallway with locked doors that no one will ever open again. Abandoned digital worlds aren't just glitchy relics, they're emotional fossils. These were spaces where friendships formed, romances bloomed, rivalries exploded, all beneath the flicker of CRT screens and dial-up tones. People spent hours building their virtual selves, only for those identities to vanish overnight when the servers shut down. What happens when a place designed to feel alive becomes forever silent? The first time you visit one of these digital ruins, it feels like stepping into an abandoned amusement park. The homepage still loads, a few buttons work, maybe even a forgotten user profile. But the community is gone. The laughter, the chaos, the trolls, the moderators, all memories floating in a cloud no one maintains anymore. The haunting isn't in ghosts, it's in silence. Take the virtual world of Club Penguin, for example. It was colorful, chaotic, charming. Kids swarmed its snow-covered towns daily. But in 2017, when Disney pulled the plug, the digital town square turned cold, permanently. Thousands logged in to say goodbye. Many recorded it. Penguins lined up. Some cried. Some danced. Others held silent vigils. Avatars standing shoulder to shoulder as the world blinked out. It wasn't the shutdown of a website. It was the funeral of a culture. And Club Penguin is just one name in a growing graveyard. From Habbo Hotel to Neopets, and from Yeovil to the Palace, these once bustling metaverses are now frozen in ammo, bare, echoing with the presence of users who can't come back. But is it just nostalgia that makes them haunting? Or is there something deeper lurking beneath these pixels? When we talk about abandoned buildings in the real world, we feel spooked because we sense time passed us by. Nature creeps in, and the walls whisper. In the digital world, time doesn't age the code. It forgets it. These servers don't rot. They vanish, sometimes without a trace. And when users try to go back, they realize the memories they made were never meant to outlive the software. So the question remains, can something intangible like a website hold real emotional weight? Can a virtual cafe feel as sacred as a real one? And when these spaces vanish, do we lose a part of ourselves too? Picture logging into an old multiplayer game you haven't touched in over a decade. The music still plays, haunting in its familiarity. But the world is eerily quiet. No chat bubbles pop up. No avatars move. The once crowded plaza is now a digital ghost town. The silence isn't just absence. It feels deliberate, almost cinematic, like the moment before a horror story begins. There's an uncanny sadness in watching a place meant for interaction become void. These aren't mere websites or games. They were living ecosystems. Players didn't just visit them, they inhabited them. And when the final user logs off, it's not just the code that becomes obsolete. It's the community, the rituals, the inside jokes. The soul of the place fades. In games like There or City of Heroes, players formed deep bonds. Entire subcultures thrived within the confines of servers. Weddings were held. Friendships strengthened. Some players even mourned lost loved ones by visiting their favorite in-game spots. So when the plug was pulled, it wasn't just lights out. It was a rupture, a cutting off from a piece of digital identity. The term sunsetting is used to describe the shutdown of these spaces. Sounds poetic, almost gentle. But there's nothing gentle about digital erasure. Unlike an old diary or photograph, these platforms often disappear without warning, taking everything with them. One moment they're alive. The next, a 404 error and a broken link. It's like a fire without smoke, just sudden absence. Players have tried to preserve what they could. Fan archives, YouTube walkthroughs, screenshot galleries, even homemade servers. But these reconstructions always feel off, like mannequins wearing the skin of something that once breathed. The emotional charge is gone. You can't reconstruct shared laughter or replicate that feeling of logging in to see who's online. Digital archaeologists now exist. Yes, real people who try to recover bits of code, assets, and chat logs from games that no longer run. They're like cyber explorers, brushing dust off data instead of bones. Their findings, broken UI, ancient message boards, corrupted textures, speak volumes. They reveal how deeply human behavior had embedded itself in these digital landscapes. We usually think of haunting as supernatural, but in these cases, it's psychological. You're haunted not by ghosts, but by the version of yourself who used to live there. That younger you who rushed home from school to log in. That you who formed digital families, who felt safe in those worlds. That version is gone, but not forgotten. And so the silence of these platforms is more than technical. It's personal. You didn't just lose a login, you lost a part of your timeline. The avatars may be dead, the servers disconnected, but the echoes linger. They always will. Before there were apps, before smart devices ruled, there were chat rooms, dimly lit message windows where anonymity was armor and words were everything. AOL, MSN, Yahoo Messenger, IRC. Millions connected, confessed, role-played, and sometimes vanished behind screen names like shadows behind curtains. These weren't just tools. They were places, digital dens. And many now sit silent, their logs long gone, their whispers echoing in static. There's a chilling melancholy in remembering how people used to type like their lives depended on it. Entire relationships lived and died inside a single chat window. Secrets were told. Comfort was shared. People poured their truth into strangers without ever hearing their voices. When these platforms disappeared, they didn't just erase messages, they erased moments of vulnerability never spoken aloud again. In retrospect, some chat rooms feel like haunted houses, not because of what was said, but because of what was never said again. Imagine logging into a resurrected version of MSN Messenger. Your contact list loads. Every screen name dimmed, offline, like tombstones in a cemetery. You scroll, remembering who they were, what they meant. But there's no reply, no status update, just the haunting realization. They're gone. Chat rooms were chaotic too. Trolling, bots, flame wars. Yes. But that chaos was human. It reflected a world finding its voice online for the first time. Many remember the strange feeling of being truly seen by someone they'd never met. The thrill of midnight typing. The drama of group chats imploding. The guilt of ghosting before it was even called that. AOL Instant Messenger, when it shut down in 2017, became a symbol of emotional extinction. Users were nostalgic, but also uneasy, because many didn't realize how much of their emotional development happened on those platforms. They flirted. They confessed. They learned to hide. They created digital masks and sometimes broke them, revealing something raw. Some developers have tried to mimic that era, creating aesthetic replicas, but it's like building a replica of a lost village. The architecture might be right, but the soul, the people, the interactions, the feeling can't be recreated. We don't just mourn the platform. We mourn the era, the tone, the slowness, the weight of each typed word. And what's truly haunting is this. Somewhere on an old hard drive, a copy of one of those conversations might still exist, unopened, untouched, A digital letter in a bottle, floating in a sea of forgotten folders, never meant to be read again. But what if someone finds it? What happens when the past loads? There's something jarring about a digital world that didn't end with a grand finale, but simply stopped. No warning, no closure. Just one day, the screen goes black. That unfinished conversation, that unsaved item, that friend you meant to message, all left dangling in the void, mid-sentence, mid-mission, mid-memory. And it's this incompleteness that haunts more than any ghost ever could. Consider Glitch, a whimsical multiplayer game filled with bizarre creatures, surreal landscapes, and strange humor. It wasn't just a game. It was a social experiment in whimsy and creativity. But despite a devoted following, the developers pulled the plug in 2012. Users logged in during its final minutes just to sit silently, watching the pixels dim. No battles, no music, just stillness. They knew this world would vanish entirely. Not archived, not saved. It would cease to exist. Players didn't just mourn a hobby. They grieved the loss of a second life. For many, Glitch was a refuge, somewhere to escape, somewhere to belong. And suddenly, it was gone. All the effort poured into crafting, exploring, building, gone like vapor. The grief was real. Forums filled with farewells and digital obituaries. The last screenshot. The last message. A place where someone once felt understood, now reduced to YouTube clips and nostalgia blogs. This isn't rare. Paragon, Lawbreakers, Battleforge, Tug, Firefall, all digital realms erased before they could evolve. Some games are shut down mid-development. Others collapse because of funding, lawsuits, or corporate decisions. But the human fallout remains the same. A void shaped like a lost community. A story interrupted. There are parallels to real-world disasters. Entire towns wiped out overnight. Natural calamities. Forced evacuations. Those who return to the ruins say the eeriest part is seeing everything left in place, as if life paused mid-breath. That is how these digital worlds feel. The avatars frozen. The cities empty. The game music still playing in the background like a lullaby for something long dead. But what about the people? Where did they go? Some scattered across new platforms, never reconnecting. Others gave up online communities altogether. Because it's hard to start over when you know it could all be deleted again. There's a learned helplessness, a quiet fear that what you build can vanish, leaving no trace. The worst part? You can't visit the ruins. There's no broken lobby or overgrown garden like in real life. When a server dies, it's like it was never there. And so, users cling to screenshots, fan art, and memories. Fragments of a universe that once felt eternal. Long before real names ruled the internet, we had aliases, digital masks stitched together from childhood obsessions, inside jokes, favorite colors, and random numbers. Names like Shadow Wolf, Starbaby91, or XX Dark Angel XX. And behind every bizarre handle was a person, often young, testing their voice in a world without eyes. These usernames were not just labels. They were identities, crafted, worn, and eventually abandoned. But what happens when those names vanish? When a username you once typed daily becomes unsearchable? When it returns no results, no memories, nothing? It's like searching for a gravestone that never got carved. A form of erasure more intimate than we realize. Usernames told stories. Not just of who someone was, but who they wanted to be. They carried emotion, rebellion, curiosity. In digital realms, your handle could make you a hero, a flirt, a ghost. And when platforms die, those names go with them. We don't just lose profiles. We lose personas, versions of ourselves now buried in code no one can access. Some usernames became infamous within their communities. Forum warriors, in-game legends, mod gods. Others were quiet, consistent presences, the kind you noticed missing only after weeks of silence. In the early 2000s, entire friend groups revolved around usernames alone. Real names were a mystery, unnecessary. Trust, love, and rage all happened through text and icon. Now, visit old message boards, if they still load. You'll find scattered threads frozen in time. Usernames last seen in 2008. Signatures with blinking GIFs. Status updates that read like time capsules. BRB. Dinner. Back from exams. This place is dying, huh? The haunting part is how sudden the silence came. These weren't endings, just stops. Even worse, many platforms delete inactive accounts. Not maliciously, just policy. But the effect is devastating. One day, you search for a aim you remember, and it's gone. Not archived, not saved, just erased. Like they never typed a word. And with it, your shared history disappears too. Sometimes, when people stumble upon screenshots of old forums, they don't just see text, they feel it. The font, the colors, the emoticons. It's like hearing a voice from long ago. And for a split second, that username comes alive again. But then the screen fades, and the silence returns. And we're left wondering, how many identities did we lose when the platforms fell? How many of our own? There's a peculiar kind of loneliness that only comes from logging into a game server long after everyone's gone. No avatars, no movement. Just your character standing there, surrounded by digital wind, echoing footsteps, and scenery that should feel familiar, but instead feels haunted. You wander. You explore. But the world is hollow. A perfect replica of what was once full of life. And suddenly, you feel like a ghost haunting a space meant for the living. In Active Worlds, one of the earliest metaverse-like platforms, users built cities, castles, entire dreamscapes. Today, many of those worlds still exist, but are eerily empty. Walk through them, and you'll see signs that say, "Welcome home." Pixel art posters, locked doors labeled with usernames long forgotten. Everything feels like it was left behind in a hurry, like a digital Pompeii. Now here's a question for you, the viewer. Have you ever returned to an old game or website and found it deserted? A forum you loved? A multiplayer map that used to be packed but now echoes with silence? If so, pause for a moment and tell us in the comments what it was. What did you find? Did it feel familiar, or did it feel haunted? We read every comment, and your stories help us piece together this vast digital graveyard. Because it's not just the absence of people that haunts these spaces. It's the permanence of their traces. An unfinished building. An abandoned player house. A shop menu that still works. These fragments whisper, someone was here. Someone cared. And now they're gone. There's a digital world called Chillville. Never popular. Never huge. But its player-made parks and floating skylands were full of personality. It shut down quietly, almost secretly. And years later, when someone found offline builds in old code repositories, the buildings were intact, but lifeless. No player ghosts. No music. Just objects waiting to be used. Characters waiting for players who would never return. That's the paradox of digital spaces. They don't decay the way real-world ruins do. A forgotten temple in the jungle slowly becomes one with nature. But an abandoned digital world? It stays pristine, frozen in its last saved moment. Waiting forever. And when you walk through them, you start to realize you're not the explorer. You're the echo. Some digital worlds end with a countdown, a farewell event, a final message from developers. But many just vanish. No warning, no closure. You log in one day, and it's gone. Server not found. Domain expired. A cold technical error replaces what once felt like a second home. And that absence, without explanation, without ceremony, can be more haunting than any ghost story. Take World, an experimental virtual platform that let users create everything, from avatars to minigames. It built a loyal community of creators. But in 2017, it shut down abruptly. No real goodbye, just a message. Due to financial strain, we have closed. Players had built entire identities there. Interactive rooms, custom music, elaborate costumes. And now? All wiped. No fanfare. No final moments. Just silence. That silence reverberates in the hearts of users. They didn't just lose access. They lost a version of themselves they only expressed in that specific digital space. And with it, all the inside jokes, late-night conversations, role-plays, and discoveries. Not every platform gave its users time to say goodbye. Many didn't even give them a chance to save their data. This sudden digital disappearance is uniquely jarring because of how much emotional labor users put in. You don't just play a game or use a forum. You invest time, heart, identity. And to have it deleted without notice is like someone stealing a piece of your past. It's why screenshots matter. Why people obsessively archive old game UIs, login pages, profile pics. These digital fossils become sacred relics, proof that these places once existed, that you once existed there. And in preserving them, users are trying to keep their memories from collapsing entirely. There's something deeply human about this, a desperate need to hold on, to remember, to not let the void win. And yet, the platforms keep vanishing, sometimes overnight. Sometimes quietly, like whispers fading at the edge of the internet. In the ruins of Yoville, another once booming social game, players tried to organize last-minute in-game gatherings when rumors of closure spread. But many didn't see the messages in time. By the next login attempt, the server was gone. Friends were lost. Virtual possessions deleted. A neighborhood erased. No email. No archive. Just absence. These moments force us to ask, how do we grieve something that never physically existed? How do we mourn when the funeral never happened? Every corner of the internet hides unmarked graves. Websites that once thrived now reduced to domain errors and broken image links. Click an old bookmark and you're met with a blank page, a dead link, a vague error. But you remember what used to be there. A story forum, a pixel pet site, a strange little game with haunting music and impossible rules. They're gone. But their shadows still exist, faint and unsettling. Some of the most chilling disappearances come from communities that were small but passionate, not backed by corporations, but by individuals, moderators, hobbyists, hobby coders. These sites carried a handmade charm. Forums about obscure fandoms, web rings of interconnected diaries, blog networks where teenage poets poured out their heartbreak. When these spaces vanish, it feels like watching someone's home collapse without a sound. Search engines may forget them. Algorithms may bury them. But the people who lived in those digital corridors never really move on. Some spend years trying to find mirror copies, old screenshots, backup servers. Others keep checking the dead URL out of habit, hoping one day it loads again. Like survivors returning to a ruin hoping to find something, anything, still standing. The emotional residue lingers strongest in interactive worlds. Virtual villages where every house belonged to a user. Online schools, concert venues, birthday parties, weddings. Some players left permanent marks. Murals, notes, inside jokes etched into the code. When the world is gone, those contributions are erased. But the idea of them becomes heavier, like phantom limbs. Sometimes, abandoned domains are bought by bots or spam farms. You click an old familiar link, and instead of nostalgia, you're greeted by casino ads or unrelated gibberish. It's a form of digital desecration. Sacred places turned into something grotesque. The contrast makes the absence feel even more violent. YouTuber explorers and net historians sometimes dive into these ruins, trying to reconstruct what was. They scrape archives, interview former users, restore fragments. But they admit, it's never the same. It's like trying to piece together a destroyed cathedral using only floor tiles and charred glass. And that's what makes these places haunting. They weren't just websites. They were emotional habitats. Now lost. And their loss leaves a strange silence. Not loud, but constant. A kind of background grief no one taught us how to name. Because when a digital world dies, there's no obituary, no siren. Just the soft disappearance of a place that once felt like home. What if the strangest part of all this isn't that these digital worlds disappeared, but that no one prepared us for how permanent their absence would feel? When a real-world location is abandoned, we know how to process it. Dust gathers, windows crack, nature reclaims. But when an online world disappears, it leaves behind nothing tangible. And yet, the emotional impact feels as solid as stone. This is the digital afterlife, a concept we never imagined we'd face when logging on for the first time. Most users never thought to back up their memories. Who screenshots casual conversations or copies their user bio every week? These moments were supposed to be infinite, floating in cloud servers. But clouds can vanish, fast. And now, we're left clutching fragments, half-remembered passwords, corrupted video files, screenshots with usernames blurred out by time. And it gets even more unsettling. Some digital spaces almost return. Revivals pop up. Fans create bootleg versions. Reimaginings. But stepping into them feels wrong, uncanny. Everything looks familiar, but nothing feels right. It's like walking through a wax museum of your old life. The shape is there, but the soul isn't. Take Toontown Rewritten, a fan remake of a beloved online world. Many old players returned, excited, but some left just as quickly. Why? Because it wasn't their Toontown. The players were new. The jokes had changed. The energy was off. It wasn't the world they said goodbye to. It was a replica with the lights on, but no warmth. This digital afterlife is quiet, yet crowded, with ghosts, memories, feelings we didn't archive properly. Sometimes you'll hear a song from an old game and feel an emotional gut punch. Not because of the song itself, but because of where it used to play. That little jingle before a friend messaged you. The background tune to your online escape. And in an instant, you're back, there. But only for a second. And here's the most haunting part. This will keep happening. The digital spaces we use today, Discords, VR platforms, social games, they'll fade too. Maybe not soon, but someday. Their echoes will join the growing chorus of lost worlds, and future users will scroll through archives wondering what it all felt like. So maybe the question isn't, how do we stop this? Maybe it's, how do we preserve the emotional gravity of spaces that were never built to last? There's a moment that many of us remember, hovering over the logout button of a world we loved, knowing deep down we might never return. The last walk through a familiar hub, the final glance at a friend list full of silent names, then click. And just like that, it's over. No confetti, no final boss, just a quiet disconnection that echoes far louder than it should. But here's the thing, those digital worlds aren't truly gone. Not entirely. They live on in memory, in screenshots buried on old hard drives, in fragments stitched into our vocabulary, in usernames we still recognize even after years away. In some strange way, they're ghosts we've invited to stay, not to scare us, but to remind us. And maybe that's why they still haunt us. Not because they were games or platforms or apps, but because they held pieces of who we were when we needed those places most. They let us experiment, escape, belong. And when they were taken away, part of us went missing too. So as we close the door on this journey through forgotten login screens, abandoned avatars, and pixelated echoes, consider this: the internet is building its own history. But no one's archiving how it feels to lose a piece of it. Maybe that's our job now. Let's keep remembering. Let's keep documenting. Because today's popular digital worlds will be tomorrow's digital ghosts. And we owe it to the future to tell them what these places meant. Not just how they worked, but how they felt. If you've ever lost a digital home, if you've ever wandered an empty server, if you've ever felt that strange ache of nostalgia for a place that didn't physically exist, then this story was yours too. And we'd love to hear about it. Drop your memories in the comments. What world did you lose? What username do you still think about? Let's build a memory archive together before more of it disappears. And if this story made you think, "Fy flom, eel," or remember, then don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Black Thread Mysteries, and tap the notification bell so you never miss the next descent into the eerie corners of the digital unknown. Because the internet never forgets, but it rarely remembers properly. Let's fix that. One forgotten world at a time.